You sure are.
I certainly am. And you know what? It's okay. I think this was my mission in life, was to just come and to point out truth, which people don't like truth because it's self-knowledge. And George Soros, above all, doesn't want to have reflected to him what he's doing these days. Anyway, Michael McKibben, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You are an amazing, stalwart individual to keep coming back and having conversations with us that keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And the reason that some of this we keep going after is because it has directly an impact. It has a direct impact on your case of Leader Technology getting your trade secrets stolen. And so now you have traced back the true taxers of the internet, the people who give out these federal certifications, and a company called Entrust started in Canada, just like they always do, and then they moved to America, make them look like they're America. Then they're bought by an asset management company, and then they're sold to another company, and that company was, well, the company I'm speaking of was Entrust, and it was sold to Axiom, and now you have traced back Axiom. And I had a strange feeling, as I told you, that when you find out where Axiom really is and who's really controlling it, we may have found something that is basically the control mechanism, the button, the control room for how pretty much the globalists work. So what have you found out new about Axiom?
I never know how to prepare for your questions because I don't even know what you're going to say before you say it. So let me think about this, because this information, some of us just come in this morning. But the current activity in Axiom is shocking. Axiom in the last month or month and a half, and I'll get these dates wrong within a week, but basically, if you remember, we were talking about this Jerry C. Jones, who was a 19-year law partner of Hillary Clinton at the Rose Law Firm in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
Remember him?
Oh, how can I forget Jerry?
Well, Jerry has been the chief officer of Axiom for at least maybe 16 years, since 2002, I believe. And we started noticing some unusual activity in their SEC filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And on, look at this date right, on August 14th, Jerry Jones dumped over $2 million of his stock. And this was at the very same time that Axiom was announcing a merger with another company by the acronym AMS. But clearly what was going on was something much deeper, and it appears to have spooked their employees, because just last week they issued an additional information statement where they described in detail what was going on. And amazingly, Axiom has sold out and is moving to China.
You must be kidding.
No. And keep in mind, the largest shareholder in Axiom is BlackRock. And if you look at the history of BlackRock, BlackRock was formed about a week before Obama and Larry Summers disbanded the Glass-Steagall protections from banking and brokerage, and BlackRock was the leader in selling mortgage-backed securities starting in 1999 under Bill Clinton. And the other disturbing aspect of BlackRock is its chairman is a man by the name of Thomas E. Donnellan. And Thomas E. Donnellan was Obama's national security advisor and issued specific rulings on cyber security right up until the time that Obama left office, and then for another year under that executive order, they, in the end of 2017, during Trump's administration, they issued a finding that was a very public document that essentially described how the tech left community was going to organize the internet going forward. And Donlin was the chairman, and the vice chairman or co-chairman of that committee was IBM's former CEO, Sam Palmisano. So everything is pointing now to confirming all the research that our researchers have been doing on the modus operandi of this very large conspiracy. I'm going to stop saying collusion. It's obvious conspiracy to take down our government. And what it appears to me, anyway, and we can all interpret this data however we want, but what it appears to me as is that this group of people are getting nervous about things going on in our country with our president and in Washington, and they've moved up their timetable. And Jones made a mistake, because an insider like him never sells off his stock so quickly. He actually filed a Form 144, which is an insider trading form when you sell that much stock that quickly. But for him to sell that stock, to be the primary signer on all documents that this Axiom company had filed with the SEC, and then to turn around and sell, then to turn around and announce that you're moving your company from Little Rock, Arkansas, where you're the largest or one of the largest employers, to China, clearly spooked their employees. So something is afoot here, and it's happening as we speak.
Wow. 40 billion they were handling, over 40 billion a year. And so Axiom is going to move into AMS, going to move to China. Okay, let me give a guess. Where are they going? Shanghai?
Shanghai.
Yeah, that's because of the Shanghai Gold Exchange
They've announced
market.
this. The amazing thing is they've announced this so quickly, they don't even have a proper corporate structure formed in Shanghai yet for this merger that they've already announced. And they've announced it to occur in October of this year, next month.
Well, what we pointed out is Shanghai is where China made up 8,000 tons of gold, tried to move it into their gold reserves, and then claim that they could do a gold-backed yuan to try to basically attack the U.S. economy because of our extreme dominance of world currency. So it doesn't surprise me that Shanghai, the home of the worst corruption economically on the face of the earth right now, where if you exchange gold and buy and sell gold in Shanghai and you stay within the Shanghai district, you get a 17% discount if you're Chinese. Does that sound like any kind of insider trading from the get-go? This is totalitarian economics. And Kissinger went for it. Now, would you please let the people know about Thomas McLarty III, who was a Kissinger associate? Literally, they have a company together. Kissinger said to President Trump and the presidents before them in the recent past, America's dead, we're all moving to China. Don't let the door hit you in the ass, turn out the lights on the way out. And That's why Eric Schmidt went there, and it is a lie that Dragonfly is not operative. The social credit system is more than operative. They've put well over 1 million Muslims in jail. Half of them died in the retraining process, re-education process. No. Totalitarianism in China is showing us where the globalists want to take us because they think they can control it through tech. Tech they stole from you.
If I could interrupt you right there. In reading about the various products and services that are provided by Axiom, it is becoming pretty clear that Axiom is the primary tech driver for the dark profiles, or these digital boxes, as you call them, that are being collected on every one of us on the planet, not just Americans, but everyone on the planet is being combined into these huge, massive databases. Now, one of the things that Axiom has specialized in the last few years is something called onboarding. And for those not familiar with that term, other than getting on a plane, onboarding in the data world is getting access to the data and documents that exist on this planet prior to us starting our digital digitization process. And so Axiom is really focused on things like digitizing the yearbooks from Kavanaugh's high school and from all of our high schools and all the documents that existed in the planet prior to the internet. So this idea of a digital box is clearly a great concern for anybody who wants privacy and security in their lives. And of course, that is guaranteed to us under the U.S. Constitution, but it's clearly being abused to the nth degree by these individuals. And they're clearly associated with the Central Intelligence Agency, or probably the rogue Central Intelligence Agency, and they are using social networking as a mechanism for data collection on the lives of every one of us on the planet. And they're very far along. They must be so far along that they can confidently move to China, and look at that from an American's viewpoint. It looks traitorous to me. I don't know about you.
Google already is incorporated. It's called their trust mechanism, and Facebook, Google, all of them, they actually assess you, just as you said. They look at, this is what they say. They say that if you can simply look at the last 100 queries, Googles as we call them, that you have put into the internet, they can tell you more about yourself than you can. It only takes a few of your questions to tell them who you are. So they already have it all set up, and it's a trust profile. And they give you a number. And right now, in America, with your phone, on the internet through Google, through Facebook, Facebook's the worst, and they are working on a psyops. They have surveilled you,
one of their
euphemisms, and they can attack you.
One of their euphemisms for what you're talking about is called blockchain. And it appears that they have pushed this notion, or this magical notion of blockchain, out into the world to kind of fool people to think, well, blockchain sounds secure. It's a block and there's chains in it and whatever. But the fact is, blockchain is nothing more than a unified database. And so what they're now saying is that beyond doing it with money, where instead of a social profile with a person's name on it, you have a social profile with a number on it that becomes a digital coin. They're attempting to unify the databases on a global scale, because that is in fact one of the technical problems with having this unified control of somebody with a social score, is data is out in multiple databases. So what they've done is they've actually implemented another element of our patent, which actually became why we were delayed in our invention, because we noticed that in very large scale data environments, products like Oracle, which are using relational databases, couldn't scale to the capabilities of what we had invented. So we actually investigated other ways of storing data, and another one that we actually worked out was object-oriented databases. And think of an object of data being like a tennis ball with Velcro on it, and as it moves around, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's essentially blockchain. So it's just another way of storing data and giving it a fancy name that nobody understands.
You're absolutely right. And then that propaganda, that perception management, becomes then the basis for suggesting a world currency that is digital. So when they couldn't get their carbon new currency, and that's what the Climate Accord was about, it was a new international currency that we were putting $500 billion into the bank to start it, and giving $5 trillion over the next few years into that bank, which they would simply take and disperse to anyone they wanted. So anything getting centralized goes through this type of digitization, compacting the information until it can be weaponized when they want it. Now, people say, I have nothing to worry about. They can surveil me. No. You don't understand. Let me explain what happens in China right now. It is a big fat lie that Google and Eric Schmidt, because we told you he was doing it as he was doing it, and then we saw the reports from outside of America, that clearly showed that they were experimenting with it, with facial recognition and the way that they put it up everywhere in China, and then they started pulling people over. So now they have police on the street who react to facial recognition, and they can tell if you're using that nasty Facebook application called WhatsApp, where you might learn some truth or speak to your friends. So they created a social credit system right there. And they can pull you over by the look on your face, and if you're using WhatsApp and your number is low, they take you to jail.
Well, let me tell you, Douglas, I worked in the Soviet Union during the Brezhnev era, working with dissidents and believers and people who were just trying to live honest lives. And the government did all the things that you're describing to them on a daily basis. And then that was pre-computer. Well, it wasn't pre-computer, but they only had mainframes back then. But they were able to control people's lives down to whether or not your children would be able to advance in school, whether you got a job, whether you got a raise, whether you were recognized as a member of society, or they would label you. And they had various terms for dissidents, but they would often accuse you of anti-Soviet activity, whatever that meant, which they could make up on the fly. And the bottom line was the people that lived in that culture were completely oppressed and suppressed from any kind of human creativity. And so what happened is the reason the Soviet Union collapsed was because so many were oppressed by that, everyone stopped working. The system got so bad that there was no creativity, there was no productivity, and the economy collapsed. And that's where we're headed. We're headed to this oppression right now, because we're seeing now with the censorship of people like Alex Jones and other conservative media outlets that don't speak in a way that's approved by these truth police. We are there with what was going on in the Soviet Union before its collapse. Right now. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. That's what's happening, folks.
Oh, yes.
We got to step up. This Axiom company appears to be one of the leaders of this data slavery that is upon us. And it's my recommendation that everyone storm the Securities and Exchange Commission and ask questions about this merger with China, with this Chinese operation.
Now, Michael, Thomas McClarty III?
Yes.
He's
one of the directors. He was one of the directors of Axiom.
And he is part of the Kissinger and Associates. He actually has a company, Kissinger
and he's a member of
McClarty.
the Council on Foreign Relations.
And so let's remember, this man takes over a company that has been shifted all the way from a Canadian-started monopoly through America, sweeps up all of the crypto keys, all of the certification authorities, gets the permanent contract, a charter, to basically put in a tax on the internet, which nobody even knows is being paid because they're not thinking about it, but they pay it all the time. And once that goes back to the people who started that, it's the same people who took over the QRS 11, which is the thing that can take down a plane, take down a train, and do what we pointed out is in the Richard C. Walker Internet of Things patent that we call aggressive remote control, because that's what they call it. So this is not about surveillance. This is about aggressive remote control. And it's in China. And remember, McClarty was with Kissinger. Kissinger said America is dead. We are the past. China's the future. He's wrong. And just as you pointed out, this is going to lead to a collapse because totalitarianism cannot work in a free economy. And they're trying to play in China the game of a free economy with the stock market. Here's what happens with their stock market. If you make too much money, you disappear. They kill you. How about that? Their number one actress in China disappeared, gone. Folks, totalitarianism is alive and well, and what's going on in China is going to make what happened in Nazi Germany look like child's play. Now, let me go on with that. Kissinger has thrown all of his eggs into that basket. So have people like Steve Bannon, James what's his name?
James W. Breyer.
Thank you. I can't remember his middle initial
Excel
because he's got a
Partners,
son.
Facebook's first chairman, director for many years at Facebook. He's the guy that really set up Facebook for the CIA.
And he set up the systems in China. He's been there for a long time. And once he got him set up, he then they asked, of course, Eric Schmidt to come over. And Eric Schmidt had to do what the Chinese do. The Chinese don't give away their secrets. When you go there, they take your secrets. They are in every single way dishonest. They only have one intent, and that is the direction of their group, the entire group of everyone in China and anyone they can absorb, like Taiwan or Tibet or the Ladakh or India, any other countries they can absorb. And they always have the same thing, and that is control of the Central Committee, because it's communism. And it's gone to a crazy man now. President Xi of China is absolutely insane. Just listen to his words, listen to what he did with the One Belt, One Road, with all the threats he's giving out, and look what he did with Eric Schmidt. He created Dragonfly. And when Facebook came over and was asked to attach to, basically, the new system, which is the alphabet system, we predicted all of this because we listened carefully to what Eric Schmidt was bragging about. And Eric Schmidt was bragging about this, and we call it the digital box. All of our systems, including credit systems, bank systems, everything, every single day we find out that Google, PayPal, your Gmail account, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of them feed this information into a central place that creates your digital box. And when Alphabet comes out, and it is no longer Google, and it is Alphabet.
Can I stop you there? I think we've identified the central place. It's called Axiom. Axiom is running this for them. Mm-hmm. And now they're moving it to China. So all of our data is going to China.
To be expected, as we predicted. And it's going to fail. It's going to fail miserably, just like their attempts to take over the currency market, the stock market, and to try to get into the game of capitalism. They're horrible at it. All they do is use direct aggressive pressure to the point of literally killing you when you do business with them. And they don't mind killing their opponents. They kill their people all the time. Remember when the Central Committee decided that you couldn't have 2 children, you can only have 1 child. And so what happened? Millions and millions and millions and millions, more than anyone can count, children were murdered because, of course, people still get pregnant and have children. That's what they do in China. If they decide how many children you can have, and if you have one you didn't expect to have, you must kill it, or else they'll kill it and charge you for it.
Well, the organ harvesting that the reports that are coming out are just phenomenally disturbing.
I've pointed this out. The Chinese, we are at war with China in all realms. Trump is at war. He knows this. Why did Trump put out an executive order that is going after the exact thing that we are talking about here today? Using the excuse or using foreign countries to penetrate into our systems, to manipulate our systems. Is that not what China has done already massively in terms of trying to change the minds of farmers in California because China's too stupid to know that Trump just turned around and gave them a subsidy? So they made more money than they ever made. And he's saying to them, hang on, farmers, let me do this deal. And when it's done, it'll be fine. Here's what the deal should turn out to be, but it won't because we can't do it that fast. No business with China. None. They are now meddling in the election. So therefore, China can go after all of the people who are connected to them, and whether they're directly connected in the conspiracy or not, which you pointed out, it is a conspiracy. But this is a national security issue where they're meddling in an election, they're attacking a president, and they're attacking our economy. Therefore,
and now they're moving our data to China.
And Henry Kissinger and Thomas McClarty III and Thomas, what's his name? Orlando Bravo and Hillary Clinton and Jerry C. Jones, and all of them who we have named over and over and over again. Here's what's going to happen. We're laughing at you because you have put all your eggs in the basket of China, and China is going to eat you. You are fools. You are fools, fools, fools to think that your greed is able to outdo the will of the American people. You're not going to win, and Mr. Kissinger, your time is over. That is the reason we said, and we predicted exactly what Kissinger had said to Trump all 3 times that he met with Trump. He said, China, China, China. And he made him an offer. He made him a big offer. And that proves that Trump is not crooked, or else Trump would be in on the Shanghai deal. But what happened? No, Trump and his people busted China for the fake gold, busted China for their manipulated stock market, busted Chinese billionaires coming into this country trying to hide here, and on and on and on, not letting them into certain industries, only letting them buy certain things that later we're going to buy back for a penny on the dollar, guaranteed, just like we did with Japan. So we have an attack on us, and you have found that it is not only in trust, it is not only Axiom, it's now AMS, and it's the China lovers who've gone to Shanghai who think that they can control our landlines in America. Because why? Eric Schmidt has been told by China, and I told this to people 2 years ago because I was actually knew the people involved in this deal. China wanted to put satellites up to beam 5G down to every single person in China. I knew the people involved. But the American corporations got involved and stopped the deal, and now Eric Schmidt did that. So you're going to be seeing so many rockets go into space with these satellites. It'll be thousands and thousands of them. So Eric Schmidt, our enemy, who's working with China, our enemy, who's already attacked our midterm elections, and has in fact attacked and hacked everything in America, and was getting a courtesy copy of everything that Hillary Clinton did the entire time, even before she was Secretary of State. As soon as you pay into the foundation, the Clinton Foundation, you get a pay to play because she's got all the keys. She acts like she's stupid with digital things. This is nonsense. She is the Lord Queen of evil when it comes to the digital realm, and you have proved it.
Yes, and by the way, guess who's handling the sale to the Chinese?
Oh, Lord.
HSBC.
The most corrupt. That is a Comey/Mueller company that is a rogue CIA bank that everything they've ever done, just like BlackRock. BlackRock is a rogue CIA operation that was started with huge amounts of assets that can't be explained. Same thing with HSBC, but more so with BCCI, one of their partners, and Deutsche Bank, another one of their partners, and on and on and on. So yes, it doesn't surprise me. Did Goldman Sachs do the deal to move the money digitally? Probably.
I'm still reading it, but it looks like it might be E-Trade.
Beautiful. They're putting all their eggs into a digital basket that we can turn the landlines off. Okay, China won't exist if we don't let their cable come into this country to manipulate us. Now will it?
Oh, here we go. Axiom NG will change its name to LiveRamp China, LR China, likely sometime in October of 2018.
LiveRamp.
LiveRamp. That's one of the products the onboarding products that Axiom bought several years earlier, companies that they bought several years earlier.
Well, now you know why insane President Xi came up with the one belt, one road, one belt, one China. Because why? There can be only one in capitalism, and they think they're going to take over the world, and they only have, 3% of the world's currency, so they tried to create a gold-backed yuan so they could take over that. Now you are clearly stating LiveRamp, which is like, to me, a reference to the One Belt, One Road, which is one China. So
here's a good. This is a question and answers with shareholders. How else does the transaction affect participation in the plan by LR employees? This is the way they obscure information that they publish in the public. They make everything acronyms, so you got to go figure out what the acronym means. And LiveRamp is LR employees, which is Axiom. As you may know, the plan was registered with the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, Shanghai branch, Shanghai SAFE, by Axiom SH, and you received the funds related to the plan, e.g. sale proceeds, in China through a special bank account that Axiom SH has established at HSBC, Shanghai branch, HSBC China. So they're forcing their employees to go sell their stock in China. It's just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Why? I don't understand how this transaction can take place. It indicates to me that perhaps Axiom's money was never really in America. Maybe it was in offshore accounts and hedge funds, or who knows what. Asset management companies hide funds. So did the asset management company Thoma Bravo, which took over the assets of Entrust, did they actually have that money here in America? Because if they did, and then it moved to Axiom, there should have been taxes paid on it. And then if it moved from Axiom to AMS and then AMS to LiveRamp, it should have been looked at by the U.S. federal government if those funds were in America. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, it's hard to say because these are private equity firms in San Francisco, so they hide a lot of activity. And I haven't dug in deeply into the major holders, but the major holders here don't appear to name Bravo. He seems to be too small of a holder in this group. This is the major world players here. This is Vanguard. This is BlackRock. What's another one? Let me look here. Vanguard, BlackRock, New York Bank, Mellon Corporation, the Bank of New York, and the third largest shareholders, RGM Capital LLC. All American companies.
Those are the usual suspects. So it would seem as if it was a real deal. Now, my question to you is this. Just like the fake Shanghai 8,000 tons of gold, when it was looked into, there was none. Just like the stock market in China, if you bought into it, sometimes you bought into companies that didn't exist, like Chinese gold mines, Chinese silver mines, Chinese rare earth mines, all kinds of stuff. You bought stuff that didn't exist, and then it went bust, and you got screwed. And nothing, too bad, sorry, it's in China, tough luck. My question to you, Michael, is why would Hillary Clinton, the person who started this and has the control, make it look like she was going to give the control to a company based in China when she knows how China works? She was on the Walmart board as a paid position. She brought the World Trade Organization to China and handed it to them on a platter, and Bill Clinton turned China into a most favored nation trading status, which it never should have been because of their human rights violations to this very day. We shouldn't be trading with them. But anyway, is it possible that this is a Hillary scam? That they're just ripping off the assets of China because they had to pay real money for what they thought was the control of the internet so that they could then control the fact of what I'm telling you is a reality? China doesn't control the lines coming into our country until there is satellite 5G controlled by one company, i.e. Eric Schmidt. They don't control nothing. So are they scamming China and ripping them off? How much did they sell this company for?
I think so.
I think this is just a total rip-off of China.
T. Rowe Price, Vanguard, Excel Partners, IDG. I think the usual suspects have taken over China, and they're just using China as a lawless society to perfect this globalist plan for a world control. And that's what it's very clear to me is happening.
They're managing $40 billion a year in assets. That means they probably sold this company for what, $400 billion, $500 billion? That would be a total ripoff of China, because they can turn around and turn the line off. They can simply go right out to where the line comes in and snip it. So why will China is so new to technology that these tech lords are kind of like the oil barons and the railroad barons of our early days. This is like the Rockefellers doing deal in oil. They're being ripped off. They're being told they can do all this stuff. They were told that the Dragonfly is, we know Dragonfly is operative, so it's a big fat lie that anybody's telling you it isn't. So they get to see Facebook, people working at Facebook going insane, setting their hair on fire with their virtue signaling that they're not going to be part of taking away the privacy of Chinese people. Hello? They don't have any privacy. What are you even thinking? You must be kidding. They're living in the worst totalitarian society that we may... there's been examples of pogroms and other things, but in terms of the overall view of the Chinese control of their people right now, you would have to say that it is beyond anything anyone's ever imagined. They can literally take away everything.
That because China was developed as a secular society, a communist society, it's abhorrent for us to think as Americans that our bankers, our lawyers, would find the Chinese system attractive. And that's always baffled me. But when we started seeing these facts, for one fact, John P. Breyer, James Breyer's father, who founded Computer World, is a contemporary of George Soros. He came out of as a refugee of Hungary as well, as a Jewish refugee, changed their names to Christian names, and started Computer World along with the Intel founder. I can't remember his name right now, who died recently. Anyway, so his son started Excel Partners, was involved in Facebook, the theft of social networking and the development of this system. And then now they're both basically living in China. And Breyer went to, his dad, John P. Breyer, went to China over 20 years ago and became what's called an advisor to the government on venture capital. So what I think happened is that very greedy people with no morality saw a great opportunity in this kind of shell of a morality that was Chinese communism, and they saw a kindred spirit. And I think this happened very naturally as kindred spirits started comparing notes, figuring out how they could pull this off. And I think they're close. I think they are close.
Well, they have Mitch McConnell's complete control of the Senate because his wife, the Secretary of Transportation, has been doing nonstop biggest Chinese ship deals that America's ever seen. Total graft, total nepotism, total corruption. And then you have Dianne Feinstein, who's 20
But that's everyday morals for these people.
Exactly.
That's the thing that we don't get, I think. We don't believe there are people like that. The fact is, I think that in general these people are like that. And now let me change the subject a bit, if I can. Because one of the things that's always bothered me is why and how have these people been able to get so many technologists and engineers and scientists to help them build this system? And that's disturbing to me as an engineer. Civil engineers, I think, maybe are a little different breed, because if things we build are corrupt, they fall down. So we tend not to do this. But when you're talking about electrons and software and unseen things, it appears that my colleagues in the sciences and in engineering have by and large sold their souls to these people for what? It seems to me that for a buck, for an interesting project. So what we see is this constellation of bankers, lawyers, and engineers, amoral or immoral engineers, have come together or found each other over these decades that we've seen this develop. And what we're observing is the end result of a very long trek toward taking control, which is another aspect, a driven aspect of these kind of people, in my experience. They want control. They think they're right. They want power over others. It's just a part of their nature. So we're dealing again with the 7 deadly sins.
Absolutely. And as you always say, they have no creativity, so they're stealing creativity. And Hillary and Bill and James Chandler and Rod Rosenstein and James Comey and the whole group, Robert Mueller, the whole group that we list again and again, they planned this in the early 90s, and because they got in early, and they got in with the Brits, and they got in with the Chinese. Remember, the Chinese were driving Arkansas. That's why Walmart started in Arkansas with my friend Sam Walton, who I knew when I was young. And really, they just took him over. He was just a guy they used. It was the Bill Clinton Chinese investment in Arkansas. And that's where the Chinese really got their foothold. And now Dianne Feinstein, which you have brought to light, her husband owns 10% of a company called ISIS Management, Avid, which produces basically all the news that you see on the mainstream media is directly out of this system. So we have Hillary controlling the entire internet. We have Avid and ISIS Management, which is also controlled by the 6 groups that control basically almost all of our media. And then behind the scenes,
by the way, which are the same bankers: T. Rowe Price, Vanguard, Goldman Sachs. I mean, it's we're seeing the same group of actors over and over again, no matter what subject you pick to look at.
Sometimes we look this up, and Blackstone can have 10 different names, and they're the top 20 owners of a corrupt company. And by the way, when you see Blackstone split and they become BlackRock, sorry, I always get that mixed up. When you see BlackRock split, the split becomes worth more than the original company. When you see that, that's called rogue CIA money. And it's called, what they do is they bring in gold as assets many times. And they claim that they have all these assets when they don't, for valuations that then get them money from big banks. And so when you put bankers and brokers together, that's evil, okay? So what we're really talking about is Hillary controls the internet, Dianne Feinstein controls the mainstream media, along with the 6 major companies that literally physically own them, but they don't control what is said. And then the intelligence community, which is now completely rogue. You've just described how it went from a Canadian company to an American company to asset management to another company to China. And we probably see that that's a fake sale anyway. But anyway, when you go to the internet, you are going to In-Q-Tel's weaponized system.
This all happened. This all started in late 1999. That's when BlackRock started. That's when In-Q-Tel started. That's when Glass-Steagall was abolished. That's when they formed these executive orders. Clinton wrote these executive orders on national security, which have now become this group that issued this order last year that includes all the tech left as members of this committee. So, I mean, we can very clearly see that we're getting set up with all the laws through Professor Chandler and others during the 90s, and they started making their move in 1999.
And your question, how do all these techies get involved, and why do they become black hats instead of white hats? Why don't they whistleblow and turn them in? Well, some of them do, and they see what happens, and they're smart, and they say, that's going to happen to me. They don't turn them in. You know, I could have got out of the military and said, hey, they're doing illegal stuff.
Inside.
But
they know what's going on inside these companies.
Yeah.
There's no way they don't know. They're smart people.
That's exactly right. But what they see is exactly what I talk about all the time. There is a full-on intelligence war going on between the real CIA and FBI against the rogue factions, some of which are literally in the top positions of those agencies. Now, when Hillary said all 17 intelligence communities, agencies agreed, they never did. They all disagreed. There wasn't two of them that agreed.
How would she know? Did she pick up the phone and talk to them?
Well, I always said, how does she know all of these things? You've pointed it out. She's got the crypto keys. She can go in any hub she wants and listen to anything she wants and even place information there. So when they went down to get all that information from Little Rock by the FBI on their new investigation under Chris Wray for the Clinton Foundation, they gathered that up. They took it back to the FBI and we're never going to see it again. It's like the 33,000 emails which were on a jump drive and on 6 disks that were in Christopher Wray's office when he got there, along with Huma Abedin and the other assistants.
You mean that data wasn't onboarded by Axiom?
Well, they didn't smash these 3 laptops and the BlackBerries. They said they did, but they didn't. They kept them for blackmail because they know that Hillary has it also, because Hillary did it on purpose. But Hillary can go into the FBI. She can mess with the data. She can plant data. She can move data. She can find out whatever she wants. Now, mind you, this is a target system. And people think, oh, crazy conspiracy. No, it is not. They can surveil and target and attack anyone. Are they doing that to everyone? No, just who they want. Who has that ability? Only the people with the crypto keys, only the people with the certificates that guarantee that a communication can even happen on the internet, whether it's in Shanghai or otherwise.
What was that Hayden said? He said, we don't look at, I forget his exact quote. He said, we're really interested in interesting people.
And as Clapper said, we don't surveil everybody knowingly. What do you mean? That means they only attack who they want. That's all that means. And then he had to come out later and say, oh, sorry, we surveil everyone, everything, because the NDAA, Obama made it legal. So shut up. Now I'm going to make a lot of money being a commentator on the news.
The last time I read the Constitution, that was illegal. That shouldn't be enough to put these people away. What's going on? Why isn't that happening?
Well, because of the senior group of people, even in the military and certainly in the intelligence agencies, are all senior executive service members who march to the same drummer, and that drummer is the leader of a union, and we don't even know who that leader is, but we know their control mechanism are the 500 lawyers in the Department of Justice who control the highest review board of all senior executive service members. And no one has ever proved us wrong on any of these points. As a matter of fact, all the input has assured us that what we have discovered is true. So what you're talking about is a shadow government that stops things from going forward. Now, how come, as you point out, the techies and the 17 intelligence agencies didn't come forward when Hillary told that lie 8 times in text messages before the debates, and then 100 times during the debates, and 1,000 times since? And the mainstream media still repeats that there was Trump-Russian collusion, though Rat Rodenstein, who's in charge of that investigation, has said there is no collusion, corruption, obstruction of justice, and that the president is not even being investigated, and yet it goes on. Why? Because people do not step forward. But if you look, people are stepping forward now. And that's why we're seeing white hats reveal information about what's really going on in the FBI, and that there are releases where even the New York Times is printing what the shadow government is doing, which is shocking. So the tide has turned. The tide has turned. Critical mass has been reached. It's now a downhill path to watch it all unfold. And it just shocks me, Michael, that again, you come with absolutely verifiable evidence, documentation, and a clear picture of what's going on with yet another Hillary Clinton either ripoff, scam, or just a new tax that she put on China that's going to make her previous taxes look small. And we see that Eric Schmidt has already done some kind of evil Jedi magic. I like to call him Count Dooku, because he's off starting his robot army, and he's starting basically a country that's going to be turned into robotatrons. They're going to be automatons. The Chinese people are being turned into automatons, and we are being turned into that the second that Eric Schmidt completely flips the switch. And we already know that he has, with the digital news agency that he started, which is basically scrubbing all news and going after anyone who doesn't state what Axios and ISIS management states is the truth and the news. We know that Facebook every single day. Oh, what happened 2 days ago? 100 companies have complete access to all of your Gmail account messages.
Surprise, surprise.
Oh, now you've told us that and laughed when anybody says, well, if you go with Proton, it's okay. And then you usually laugh when somebody says that, because there's nothing secure. Hillary, if she wanted, could be listening to your telephone conversation right now, and if she wanted, she could adjust it, and she could hang up on whoever you're talking to. That is not an exaggeration, folks. So,
correct.
What we see with why she wanted and demanded that there be an FBI investigation, as you pointed out, she's got all these crypto keys. Once it goes to the FBI, you might as well just hand it over to Hillary and the gang.
Yep.
And we know it's true.
I found it interesting that how in the Kavanaugh hearing yesterday, there was this lockstep demand that the FBI take over an investigation of these allegations. And isn't that curious that that came a week or two after our discovery that Hillary controls all these FBI keys?
Oh, yes.
And he thinks the young lady doth protest too much.
Exactly. It's like the CIA operative, the Stanford CIA recruiter, coming to be the witness against Kavanaugh. I like what Betsy and her team did, basically indicating that that whole thing was just a bunch of bullfrogs out at night, all trying to outdo each other. I love the Democrats trying to attack Kavanaugh. They showed how stupid they were, and they tried to play like they were lawyers.
I've got 4 daughters, and I would be appalled if I ever heard that happened to them during high school. And I don't believe that they would have held back something like that from me, because I would have done what any parent would do, and that would be report this person to the police. And the fact that there's no record at all of that event that she alleges 35 years ago, for me is enough. I think they ought to call a moratorium on dipping into people's high school records. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. If there wasn't a police record at the time, then they should not be digging into yearbooks.
Well,
I mean, what have we come to in this country that our esteemed, quote, Judiciary Committee is down to asking a judge candidate for the highest court in the land whether he's had sexual intercourse with somebody during high school? I mean, what have we come to from a moral position? Immoral.
This is Clinton logic, and the person who was the accuser was not a victim. Dr. Ford wasn't a victim. She was a predator. And that's the reason, through her brainwashing, that they could use existing emotional conditions inside of her to be turned to use as the key, as they
I heard you say this yesterday. Could you be a little bit more specific? Because these behavioral models, I think, are lost on most people, and most of the time, including me. So when you talk about this programming, what in fact are you talking about? How do you program a human being?
You can be programmed to pass a lie detector test, because lie detector tests are not actually very accurate. Once you understand that it's the sweat on your hands that actually controls whether or not it can tell whether you're lying, you can control your ability to sweat by simply imagining certain things. But if you're going to get past many, many lie detector tests over and over again, then what they do is they simply brainwash an old memory and put a new dress on it.
Now, how do they do that?
Well, she was attacked by two men. They've come forward and they said who they were. So she did have that occurrence. But it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh. And let's remember, this is a person who bragged that she had sex to her best friend, some of her best friends have come forward and said some horrible things about Dr. Ford, and I'm not making this up, and I don't want to give you the details because you'll think I'm making them up, but she had sex with a lot of people. She was like a sexual predator herself. And what a joke to say that 2 guys jumping on her who didn't consummate the event would be the most traumatic event in her life, and she says she has post-traumatic shock syndrome from it from 36 years, but she is a psychologist who stuffed it for 36 years and never once even told her husband the name of the person, though she claims that his name was yelled out when it was being done.
Well, these salacious details aside, what really disturbs me is the fact that senators would orchestrate this event to occur at a nomination hearing. I mean, where's our honor? Where's our dignity? What I saw yesterday was so dishonorable and so undignified and so salacious that I was totally embarrassed for our government.
Well, as you remember, we predicted when he put forth the name of Brett Kavanaugh, because you were very concerned because he doesn't seem to be a straight shooter. And what we pointed out was that isn't probably what's actually happening. He threw Brett Kavanaugh to the dogs at the midterms so that both sides would show who they were. So the Democrats showed that they have no morals, they're liars, and they will stop at nothing to get the money from the Democratic leadership that comes in.
Well, I'm not sure the morals was much higher on some of the Republican side, because all they did was grandstand, except for a few senators.
Oh, they were getting ready for the next election. And it was one of the great moments that they had to actually do some virtue signaling, which they don't usually do. So, Lindsey Graham's speech was probably the greatest speech he ever gave. But the point is you're right, complete immorality on both sides. But that was just a political assassination that was just like the Russian dossier. It was an October surprise that came out at the 11th hour that was never supposed to be made public. Because once it was made public, anyone could see through it. And
so what I think we're seeing here is the natural moral end result of all of this back end machination of finance and law and politics that's created this monster global control plan, and it's finally spilling out. They've been able to keep it secret for all these years, but it's finally spilling out into the public domain, thankfully, hopefully before it's too late. And what we're seeing is the utter moral immorality of the shell that these people have created around themselves. Because I remember working with Professor Chandler, who obviously was at the center of this cabal, and I was frankly totally fooled by him. He had total control of his body language. He clearly was lying to me pretty much 100% of the time. Maybe occasionally he told me something that was true. But for a person who thinks he knows human nature pretty well, I was totally fooled by him. And what I'm noticing is that these ringleaders are all skilled in that way. They can pretty much confuse or mislead most of the people most of the time. But yesterday, we saw their veneer slip a bit.
Well, you hit it on the head right there. You're talking about sociopaths who have no concern for humans. None. Zero. And James Chandler, Professor James Chandler, was as big a sociopath as Hitler. And he trained Hillary Clinton. And now we have the result that the Hillary Clinton White House, and remember, when you say Bill and Hillary Clinton, you might as well add the name Bush at the end. So since the absolute CIA takeover of the White House with George H.W. Bush, though Jimmy Carter was also CIA, very much so, he got his money from BCCI. But anyway, it's been a CIA White House ever since, and it's basically been the Bush New World Order, where they get their piece of the pie. And now they shamelessly take their piece of the pie. So You've nailed it. It's the lack of morality. It is, in fact, that they are sociopaths. And again, you have followed the evil trail of the sociopaths, and now it's led us again to China, to Shanghai, to live ramp. I can't wait to hear the next installment of the research that you and your researchers are coming up with, Michael. So thank you for being with us today. We'll end this now, but we'll get together again to see how much more you keep digging up. I thought you had reached the bottom.
Well,
when you
keep in mind,
there.
it's a whole team of people, not just me. So
I know. Hundreds of people are working on these things, and we see the results because they come in all these different pieces, and somehow you are able to put it all together from all the different research. So we thank you for your genius. And
you're welcome.
We hope that someday, soon, the Miller Act will be signed, and President Trump will simply start